Today we'll be talking about osteoporosis evaluation and management. Now, osteoporosis is a silent disease unless it is complicated by fractures. It is the most common bone disease in humans. It is characterized by low bone mass, microarchitectural deterioration, compromised bone strength, and increased risk of fractures. Here you can see that the normal bone is quite dense and it becomes a rare, or the bone trabeculation are very fine in an osteoporotic bones. So the bone strength is actually a measure of bone mass as well as the bone quality. So this is the micro architectural deterioration in the bone. Now it affects about 1 in 2 women and 1 in 5 men. People over age of 50 usually will break a bone mainly due to a poor bone health. Now, the major risk factors are a history of fracture as an adult, fragility fracture in a first degree relative, a Caucasian and an Asian post-menopausal woman, a low body weight, current smoking status, use of oral corticosteroids for more than 3 months. Additional risk factors are impaired vision, estrogen deficiency at a young age, that is less than 45 years, dementia, poor health and frail body, recent history of fall, low calcium intake through the whole life, low physical activity, and more than 2 alcoholic drinks per day. Now, factors which are associated with bone loss in men are genetics, smoking as well as alcohol intake, low calcium intake, low physical activity, testosterone production, which if it is less, and estrogen production if it stops. So there are some medical conditions which are associated with increased risk of osteoporosis. They are COPD, Cushing syndrome, eating disorders, hyperparathyroidism, hypophosphatasia, IBS, rheumatoid arthritis and other autoimmune diseases, insulin dependent diabetes, multiple sclerosis, multiple myeloma, stroke, thyrotoxicosis, vitamin D deficiency, and liver disease. There are several other risk factors also which are not included in this list. Now, there are some drugs which are associated with reduced bone mass. They are aluminum, anticonvulsants, cytotoxic drugs, glucocorticosteroids, immunosuppressants, gonadotropin releasing hormones, that is leuperon, lithium, chronic use of heparin, supraphysiologic thyroxine doses, aromatase inhibitor, and Depo-Provera. So all these things can reduce bone mass. Now, as far as bone is concerned, bone is formed by the osteophytes, which are the cells inside the bone which detect the mechanical loading and need for bone renewal and repair and form the bone. Osteoclasts are dissolving bone and they create the cavity-like process in 3 to 4 weeks. And osteoblasts fill the cavity with a new bone. The process usually takes about 3 to 4 months. All cells communicate with each other to regulate the bone renewal process. Now this is, you can see the osteoclast in action dissolving the bone. And this is the osteoblast on an artificial lab surface which is forming new bone. Now the resting phase, the osteophytes form the lining cells. They activate and call the osteoclast. They resorb the bones and there is a apoptosis. Then the proosteoblast come and then they form a new osteoid or the osteoblast synthesis. Now the process of aging in women is associated with increase in the bone remodeling in both the cancellous and cortical bone combined with a negative remodeling balance resulting in a bone loss and disruption of bone microarchitecture. Trabecular thinning and loss of trabecula can be observed in cancellous bone, whereas in cortical bone, endocortical and intracortical bone loss leads to reduced cortical thickness and increased cortical porosity. In men, aging is predominantly associated with reduced bone formation and a low bone turnover. Now, changes in matrix and mineral composition of bone can also contribute to increased bone fragility. Now, effect of anti-resorptive and anabolic drugs on bone remodeling and modeling. Now, age-related bone loss is associated with an increase in remodeling and a negative remodeling balance in individual remodeling units. The anti-resorptive agents acts predominantly by reducing the remodeling rate, whereas the anabolic agents produce their effect by increasing the remodeling in combination with a positive remodeling balance or stimulating bone modeling. This is an article in Lancet in 2019. So, the therapeutic approach can be either anti-resorptive, which reduce the remodeling, or anabolic, which increase the modeling based bone formation and increase remodeling with positive remodeling balance. Now, anti-resorptive drugs are bisphosphonates, SERMs, rank ligand inhibitors like denosumab, whereas the anabolic drugs is predominantly teriparatide. Now, failure to diagnose and treat is a very important cause of a high incidence of osteoporosis. And this is also a high risk for a fracture. So in a study of 4 Midwestern health systems, about 1/8 to 1/4 of hip fracture patients received BMD testing. Less than 25% were given calcium and vitamin D supplements, and less than 10% were treated with anti-resorptive medications. Now, BMD is expressed in absolute terms of grams of mineral per square centimeter scanned, and this is usually done in a DEXA scan. So, a normal is within 1 standard deviation of the mean level of a young adult reference population, and a t-score of -1 and above is normal. Osteopenia is when your t-score is between -1 to -2.5. Osteoporosis is when your t-score is less than 2.5, and severe or established osteoporosis is when your t-score is less than -2.5 along with a fracture. So this is explained in this graph. Anything more than -1 is normal, -1 to 2.5 is low bone density, that is osteopenia, and less than 2.5, -2.5 is osteoporosis, and it can cause a fracture. Now, FDA approved therapeutic options for prevention includes estrogen, bisphosphonates that includes alendronate, ibandronate, zoledronic acid, and raloxifene. And for the treatment, it is recommended to use either calcitonin, PTH that is teriparatide, and denosumab. Now, drugs that can be used in osteoporosis summarized in this diagram. The PTH acts on the bone formation, the SCRMs also act on the bone formation, whereas the denosumab will act on the osteoclast activity. They reduce the osteoclast activity, and it's basically a rank ligand inhibitor. Now we talk about the different medicines which are available. Bisphosphonates can be oral or IV. Alendronate is the most oldest which is used, and it is usually used in a weekly dose, and it reduces the fracture risk in vertebra as well as the hip. Risidonate is a newer drug. Ibandronate is one of the newer drug, and zoledronic acid is an IV drug which is used once in a year, and it also reduces the vertebral and hip fractures. The rank ligand inhibitor is denosumab, and it is usually given as a subcutaneous injection every 6 months, and it reduces the fracture in the vertebra, hip, and the non-vertebra as well. SCRMs, that is the raloxifene group, is oral once a day treatment, and they are useful in reducing only the vertebral fractures. Parathormone, that is a parathyroid hormone receptor agonist. Teriparatide is a subcutaneous injection that is given daily, and it reduces the vertebral fracture as well as the non-vertebral fractures significantly. Now, adverse effects are to be seen. The common adverse effect in bisphosphonate group is GI, and they cause esophagitis, and occasionally they can cause an acute phase reaction with IV administration. Rarely they can cause muscle pain, eye inflammation, occasional atypical fractures, and osteonecrosis of the jaw. Hypersensitivity, hypocalcemia, esophagitis, and they should be used in caution with a patient with a impaired renal function. Rank ligand inhibitor are predominantly safe, but they can cause osteonecrosis of jaw in particular patients, and they can also cause hypocalcemia uh, and difficulty uh, and rebound fractures. So when the democentrab is discontinued, they can cause a multiple vertebral fractures. Estrogen can cause breast pain, headache, and edema, and can cause undiagnosed uterine bleeding, breast cancer, estrogen-dependent neoplasia, venous or arterial thromboembolic disease, substantial liver impairment, and pregnancy. SCRMs can cause vasomotor symptoms, muscle cramps, venous thrombosis. The PTH has common side effects of muscle cramps, increased serum or urine calcium or uric acid levels, occasionally orthostatic hypotension. Occasionally, they can cause hypersensitivity, nephrolithiasis, and they should not be used in children and adolescents with open physis. They should not be used in patients with Paget's disease. They should not be used in patients with radiations, bone metastasis. So these are all, and metabolic diseases, hypercalcemic disorders, and maximum duration of therapy over patient's lifetime is 2 years. Now, pharmacological management of osteoporosis in a postmenopausal woman, in the guidelines in Journal of Clinical Endocrinological Metabolism in 2019 May, recommendation is whom to treat. So all postmenopausal women at high risk of fractures, especially those who have experienced the recent fractures, have to be treated with pharmacological therapy. In US, the pharmacological therapy is recommended for postmenopausal women with hip or vertebral fractures with T-scores minus 2.5 or less in the femoral neck, total hip or lumbar spine, and those with T-scores between minus 1 to minus 2.5 and a 10-year probability of more than 20% for a major osteoporotic fractures and more than 3% for hip fractures based on the US adapted FREX tool, which is country specific. Now, this is a FREX tool. This is a 10-year probability of fracture, and you measure, you feed the country, bone mineral density, age, gender, and the clinical risk factors into that. And you can take out on your phone and calculate it. And this is how you calculate. You fill up the form and you calculate it. And once you calculate it, you will get a probability of the fractures in a particular patient. Now, after exclusion of secondary causes, menopausal women and men more than 50 years have to be treated who have a clinical diagnosis of hip and spine fractures and who have DEXA scan T-score of minus 2.5 or below. If the T-score is between minus 1 to minus 2.5, the 10-year risk for fractures is more than 3% for hip fractures and more than 20% for a major osteoporotic fracture. Now, bisphosphonate is used in postmenopausal women. We recommend initial treatments with bisphosphonate to reduce the fracture risk, and ibendronate is usually not recommended to reduce the non-vertebral hip or fractures. In postmenopausal women with osteoporosis who are taking bisphosphonate, we recommend that the fracture is to be reassessed after 3 to 5 years, and women who remain at a high risk of fractures should continue the therapy, whereas those who are at low to moderate risk of fracture should be considered for a biphosphonate holiday. Now, technical remark is about the drug holiday. A bisphosphonate holiday is operationally defined as temporary discontinuation of bisphosphonates for up to 5 years. Now, this period can be longer depending on the BMD and clinical circumstances. The evidence is stronger for retention of benefits during drug holiday for alendronate and zoledronic acid where there are randomized extension trials. A shorter reassessment periods of 3 years or more is appropriate for annual IV zoledonic acid based on the evidence from research controlled trials showing residual effects after 3 years of annual use. Now, once a bisphosphonate holiday is initiated, you assess the fracture risk at 2 to 4 year interval and consider reinitiating osteoporosis therapy earlier than 5 years if there is a significant decline in BMD, a fracture or other fracture that increase the clinical risk status. Now, denosumab is used in postmenopausal women with osteoporosis who are at a high risk of osteoporotic fractures, and it is an alternative. The dose is 60 mg subcutaneously every 6 months. The effect of denosumab is on bone remodeling, reflected in bone turnover markers, and they reverse after 6 months if the drug is not taken on schedule. Thus, a drug holiday or a treatment interruption is usually not recommended with the denosumab. The postmenopausal women with osteoporosis who are taking denosumab, we suggest that the fracture risk be assessed after 5 to 10 years and that the women who remain at high risk of fractures should either continue denosumab or be treated with other osteoporosis therapies. In postmenopausal women with osteoporosis taking denosumab, admission of denosumab should not be delayed or stopped without subsequent anti-resorptive drugs or other therapy to prevent the rebound in bone turnover and to decrease the risk of rapid bone mineral density loss and an increased risk of fractures. So, if it is stopped, it should be supplemented with other agents or it should be continued. Now, teriparatide is used in postmenopausal women with osteoporosis at a very high risk of fractures, especially those with severe or multiple vertebral fractures. And we recommend teriparatide for up to 2 years for reduction of both vertebral as well as non-vertebral fractures. We recommend treatment with anti-resorptive osteoporosis therapy to maintain the bone density gains. Now, SERMs is used in postmenopausal women with osteoporosis at a high risk of fractures and with a patient characteristic with a low risk of DVT and for whom the bisphosphonate and denosumab are not appropriate and or with a high risk of a breast cancer. Now, tibolone and menopausal hormonal therapy usually in postmenopausal women with a high risk of fractures and with the patient characteristic as below. Using estrogen only in women with hysterectomy to prevent all type of fractures, and they should be under 60 years of age, less than 10 years after the menopause, at low risk of DVT, those in whom bisphosphonate and denosumab are not appropriate, with bothersome vasomotor symptoms, climacteric symptoms, without contraindications, without prior MI or stroke, without breast cancer, and those who are willing to take menopausal hormonal therapy. Only in those patients, menopausal hormone therapy and tibolone can be used. Now, calcitonin is used in a postmenopausal woman with a high risk of osteoporosis, and it is usually used in vertebral fractures. So, used only in women who cannot tolerate raloxifene, bisphosphonate, estrogen, denosumab, tibolone, or teriparatide, or for those in whom these therapies are not considered appropriate. Now, calcium and vitamin D are very important. They have to be given in all the patients, specifically at those patients with high risk of fractures with osteoporosis. And usually calcium and vitamin D should be used as an adjunct to the osteoporosis therapies. In postmenopausal women at a high risk of fractures with osteoporosis who cannot tolerate bisphosphonate, estrogen, SCRMs, denosumab, tibolone, teriparatide, we recommend daily calcium and vitamin D supplementation to prevent hip fractures. Now, important thing is monitoring. Whenever you are using these agents, you need to do DEXA scans every 1 to 3 years to assess the response to the treatment. You can use a serum C-terminal cross-linking telopeptide to assess for the anti-resorptive therapy. And you can use procollagen type 1 N-terminal propeptide for the bone anabolic therapy. It's an alternative way of identifying poor response or non-adherence to the therapy. So This is a flow chart. All postmenopausal women need to be started with a lifestyle modification and see a 10-year fracture risk as per the country specific guidelines. If the patient is of low risk, you can reassess the fracture risk every 2 to 4 years. If it is a high risk or a very high risk, you can start either with bisphosphonate, either denosumab, teriparatide. I always use calcium and vitamin D as an adjunct therapy. For the bisphosphonate, you can consider a drug holiday. If it is a high risk, you can switch to the alternate therapy. If the patient is intolerant to bisphosphonate denosumab, you can consider uh, SERMs or hormone replacement therapy. In rest of the everything, it is best to use the three baseline medications, which are bisphosphonate, denosumab, and teriparatide. Teriparatide should not be used more than 2 years. Denosumab should not be discontinued. It should be continued as per the advice of the physician and usually repeated at 6 monthly interval. Now, anabolic therapy usually causes bone formation exceeding the bone resorption in all the bone envelopes, and increased remodeling of the cortex during teriparatide treatment is reflected by increased in cortical porosity and increased intracortical bone density. Usually, intracortical remodeling after 2 years of teriparatide treatment increased a persistent teriparatide effect during the full treatment dose. There is a direct evidence supporting long-term modeling based bone formation by teriparatide. The periosteum contains progenitor cells which are capable of generating new bone in response to the mechanical stimuli. Increase in the bone density at 2 years suggests that is increase in the periosteal modeling and formation of new bone uncoupled from the previous resorption. During the teriparatide treatment, the stimulation of remodeling with overfilling of the resorption site may be the predominant effect of the teriparatide both after 1 month and after 2 years of the treatment. A positive balance to formation to resorption increases the bone mass, and replacement of the old and damaged bone with new organic matrix may result in improved bone microarchitecture, reduced microcrack accumulation. Now, long-term effects of teriparatide on volumetric using quantitative CT scans shows that the rectangular virtual biopsies taken with a high resolution CT scan shows that you do it at baseline, you do it 6 months, 1 year and 2 years, that there is a progressive increase in bone mass on serial virtual biopsies with the CT scans. Now, apart from that, lifestyle measures are very important. You need to start good nutrition, physical therapy, and less harmful lifestyle habits. Stop smoking, stop alcohol for all the patients. Uh, you need to increase your calcium and vitamin D intake. The most studies have investigated with calcium and vitamin D have not evaluated outcomes specifically for patients with deficiencies. The correction of deficiencies by ensuring a total daily intake of calcium more than 80 to 120 milligrams and a serum 25 hydroxy vitamin D of at least 50 nanomole per liter is beneficial, but supplements in calcium replete and vitamin D replete individuals appear to have a little or no benefit. But excessive intake of calcium, that is more than 1500 milligrams total daily, is associated with the increased risk of renal stones and cardiovascular events. High proteins is usually associated with reduced fall frequency. A comprehensive fall prevention program is important in elderly patients, and usually we start muscle strengthening, balance training, and correction of visual impairment in these patients. These can reduce fall frequency, but they are not shown to reduce the fracture risk. These general measures can slow bone loss in older adults, but do not restore the BMD, are not sufficient therapy for patients at high risk for fractures. Now, in a summary, lifestyle and nutritional optimization for bone health is needed for all, especially calcium and vitamin D. A FREX BMD scaling should be done. This is a 10-year fracture risk assessment according to the country, and it is specific. Now, the European Endocrine Society recommends anabolic treatments, teriparatide as the first line of therapy for the patients with severe osteoporosis, multiple fractures, or very low bone density. Osteoporosis at high risk of fractures treated with teriparatide and full 24-month treatment course is important to achieve best clinical outcomes. Build first with anabolics like teriparatide and save later with the anti-resorptives, that is the bisphosphonates and the denosumab. Thank you.